Braves and baseball fans, it's time to take a trip from coast to coast across Major League Baseball.
There it goes, a long drive. If it stays fair, home run.
One strike away. Sandy into his windup. Here's the pitch. Swung on and missed a perfect game.
Fly ball deep left center. Grissom on the run. Yes! 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 The Atlanta Braves have given you a championship. Listen to this crowd.
Left side, Swanson to first. Braves, world champions.
Braves and baseball talk, straight from the diamond.
Brought to you by Mark Spain Real Estate. Get a guaranteed offer on your home today. And Window Nation. Call the pros at Window Nation at 866-90Nation.
Here's Grant McAuley.
Hello and welcome to From the Diamond. I am Grant McAuley. These are the Kia Studios of Sports Radio 92.9 The Game. It may be a rainy Sunday, but it was a good Sunday for the Atlanta Braves, who finished off a 3-game sweep of the Pittsburgh Pirates, a 5-1 homestand, and the Braves continue to fly high as Major League Baseball's best record, just adding to it seemingly daily at this point. Now they're 45-21 as they sweep away this series. The Braves are doing their thing, and they did it in a very dramatic way on Sunday, an exciting way on, a day where you kind of wondered if the weather was just going to wreak havoc, and this was going to be one of those where you couldn't start on time, or you got started and then had to sit through a long delay. But credit to whoever booked the weather, and also just for the general timing of the universe, I guess. The Braves didn't have to worry about it too terribly much, but there were some moments in that game that I think just kind of gave you an indication of just what this club is this year. Because I think as we started out, there was a fair reason to wonder, maybe be skeptical about, all right, the 2025 Braves went through a lot. They went through a lot of injuries. They had a ton of inconsistency. They just were not a team that ever felt like it was able to put anything close to the full puzzle together. But the 2026 Braves, while also coming into the season with some questions of the injury variety at the very least, and needing to prove some things individually and collectively, they just continue to do that. The Braves continue to win series. The Braves continue to show you that this is a real thing. We are past the Memorial Day checkpoint. That lets you know you got a big enough sample size to maybe start wondering about where exactly you are in the big picture. I don't think the Braves have had to wonder too much about it because they pretty much came out of the gate in the exact opposite way of things a year ago. They didn't have to fight their way back to 500 only to fall below for the rest of the year and never find it again. In fact, this Braves team doesn't really have a thing with losing series. They just don't enjoy it, so they just stop doing it. They've done it twice this year, which is a wild thing to look at when you're talking about 19, 20 series into the year. And I ran this number, a couple of 3 weeks ago, talked about it on the show. The Braves, it took them into the month of August to win as many series as they have won this year, really into the month of September, if we're looking at it at this point, to win as many series as they have won. And we just started the month of June. But then you go back and look and you see, well, what are the other years that the Braves have done stuff like this? Well, 2003, that was a 100-win season for the Braves. 1998, 1997, 1994. What was happening in the 1990s around here? I seem to remember it was a pretty good time to be an Atlanta Brave, a pretty good time for the Braves in general, and some good things were happening on a pretty regular basis, and that is what it's starting to feel like again around these parts. Now, that may have been in some cases 2 stadiums ago, but look, wherever they've been, wherever they've gone this year, their own stadium or on the road, the Braves have been a tremendously good team. In fact, it might surprise you to know, the Braves have a game better record-wise away from Truist Park than they are at home. They're only 22-11 at home. It's only a .667 winning percentage. What's wrong with these guys? They're only winning 2 out of every 3 games. Just kidding. 23-10, though, on the road. I mean, I look at the home record and I think, okay, that tracks. That makes sense. Every team wants to really take advantage of their home games and have that opportunity to have the walk-offs and the excitement and the comebacks and all those things. And the Braves, they're a comeback team. We saw another one on Sunday. Michael Harris, the second last couple of days, has been out of the lineup, dealing with a little bit of back tightness. Walt Weiss said, look, we're going to give him a little bit of time. He'll get some treatment. He might be available. Didn't see him yesterday. We saw him at the best possible time today as he came up with the bases loaded and delivered 3 runs for the Braves in a 3-2 win over the Pittsburgh Pirates and a 3-game sweep over the Pittsburgh Pirates. And inside of this game, you see some of the other things that have worked so well for the Braves this year. How about Bryce Elder? Gives you another quality start. And even with the back end of your bullpen unavailable, and I don't think we knew for sure that Robert Suarez wasn't going to be available today, but we found out, the Braves were able to piece that thing together Reynaldo Lopez, Tyler Kinley. How about a big return to form for Tyler Kinley, getting Lopez out of trouble in the 8th? And then, hey, tip of the cap to Didier Fuentes. I was not expecting to see him in the 9th. I kind of thought it'd be a Robert Suarez game. But they have leaned heavily on the back end of their bullpen. So you understand that, and we'll hear from Walt Weiss a little bit later in the show about the calculus of what they're trying to do here. Because the Braves are in a position now, as you look at it, as we talk here, they're 10 games in front of the Philadelphia Phillies. But don't bother telling Walt Weiss that and wondering, is this going to change the way that you're looking to do things now that you have this nice big lead? The answer, I'll give you the Cliffs Notes version, is absolutely not. We're going to keep trying to win every day. We're going to keep trying to win every series. We are not going to let up. But there are some things that every big league team and every major league manager has to juggle, has to manage. No pun intended. I mean, it's right there in the name, manage. You have to manage your bullpen appropriately. And even with an off day on Monday, sometimes you still got to stack those days for guys to really get them reset. And you can't argue with the way that Walt Weiss has managed this bullpen this year. And that's not to bag on anything that Brian Snitker had to go through, because I think in some cases, especially last year, it didn't matter who you called in the game. Things just weren't going right for a while. Even Raisel Iglesias, who's been one of the best closers in baseball for the better part of his career since he took over that job, is closing in on 300 career saves, has saved 35 games in a row since figuring himself out last year. Everybody was going through it, but thus far this year, the Braves have been able to walk that tightrope and that fine balance of how you want to manage a bullpen, win games, and put yourself in position to go back out the next day and win again. And win again with who's available in some cases is the mark of a truly deep team. And this is something I want to get into a lot on today's show, because we're going to hear from Dominic Smith a little bit later on. I had a chance to catch up with him. Talk about a guy that wasn't even on the Braves' radar when spring training began. We're going to talk about Jorge Mateo, another guy who really wasn't on the radar, expected to make an impact on what the 2026 Braves did. If I were to give you where the Braves are, how many games in front they are, and then ask you, who do you think's most responsible for this? You get a whole bunch of answers that would seem to be the same. You get Chris Sale, you get Ronald Acuna Jr., you get Matt Olson. You know, you'd like to say Ozzie Albies and Austin Riley and Michael Harris and all these names, Drake Baldwin, all these names that you know. But in some cases, we talked to Mauricio Dubón a couple of weeks ago, and it's a credit to these guys that have come in and basically just come together, just glued this roster together in ways that it hasn't been assembled before. And that depth has been a huge, huge strength for the Braves. And it extends beyond the bench into the bullpen on a day like today. Because, again, to get back to my point, I guess, here was Didier Fuentes was not the guy I was expecting to see when the bullpen door swung open in the 9th inning on a rainy day trying to get his first career save. And gives up a leadoff double. Well, now it's raining. The tying runs out at second base. You've not really been in this position before. And, you know, there's not really a big net behind you. Like, Raisel Iglesias isn't all of a sudden going to start warming up. Robert Suarez ain't coming in. Dylan Lee's not coming in. You're trying to stay away from those guys, so there's kind of a little bit of added responsibility. And I don't know if you're thinking about that in the moment if you're Didier Fuentes. I don't guess it does you any good. But he has been a real credit to that bullpen. And there's not a more talented arm this side of Robert Suarez than Didier Fuentes out in that bullpen. And he showed you his ability to kind of grind through that. The conditions weren't great. He got himself in a jam. He got the weak grounder to the mound that he needed, but it got over his head, and all of a sudden he's in a bigger jam. But he was able to make the pitches, get out of it, and ultimately pick up that strikeout to close out a 3-game sweep and pick up his first save of his career. So a nice little moment for him as well. And I don't think we really looked at Didier Fuentes and thought he'd be picking up a bunch of saves this year, and he may not. But it was a fun story. And this Braves team has been full of fun stories. Didier Fuentes is certainly one of them. Bryce Elder started this game. He's been another one. And nobody's saying that Bryce Elder is going to go out there and become the ace of your staff. But what he did over the first 6, 7, 8 weeks has been tremendous. And even if he's taken some lumps in a couple of starts here lately, what else can you ask of the guy? More times than not, really the only time I can think of that he hasn't was the Boston start, giving you a chance to win a baseball game. He's covered the innings, he's gotten the outs, and he's just gone out and done his thing. And he did it again today. Another quality start for Bryce Elder. And you needed that because, hey, if Bryce Elder is hitting the showers in the second inning, I don't know how you're figuring this game out today. And look, in the grand scheme of things, yeah, the Braves would still be 20-something games over 500. But there have been, this year, I guess, there's a couple of annoying losses, and you'd like to avoid those. And the Braves did a great job of that. They got the pitching they needed. They got the big hit that they needed in the one inning in which they were able to score all their runs and do the things that have really been the hallmark of this club. long story short. Braves with a .682 winning percentage. That is the best in Major League Baseball. Los Angeles Dodgers have picked up some steam, though, here lately. They're now 42-23 here on a Sunday. And, of course, over in the American League, there is no team that has reached the 40-win plateau as of yet. The Milwaukee Brewers, who the Braves will see, I believe, a little bit later this month, they're knocking on the door, a chance to win 40 games here soon. But, I mean, we're talking about the Braves out ahead of the Dodgers in terms of best record by more than just a nose. And it has been a pretty complete showing from the Braves in the way that they have gone about things this year. 344 runs scored thus far this year. That's second only to the Washington Nationals. And the Braves have allowed just 228 runs. So when you look at that run differential, that column people bring up sometimes, and you think, okay, if it gets to a certain point, we should have a record that is reflective of that point. And when you're 100-plus runs up in the run differential, you should be a club that's 15 or 20 games over 500. And, well, darn, look at that. The Braves are. They're a team that is 24 games over 500 as we head into the, second full week of the month of June. It's been an incredible run. They will hit the road. We'll talk about what's coming up for them after that. But as far as homestands go, 5-1. I think you'll take that just about every time. Braves taking 2 out of 3 from the Blue Jays to get things started, and then sweeping away the Pittsburgh Pirates, who I will say this, it may not have necessarily looked like it when you're talking about a sweep. Pirates have been a better club this year, but the challenge over 162 of continuing the momentum of the improvement, obviously one of the big parts of a 162-game season, but we'll leave that there. Pirates are heading out of town. They did not have to see Paul Skeens. I'll also stipulate, if you're an offense that's trying to do the things the Braves just did, not having to do it against Paul Skeens, probably one of those things you appreciate quite a bit. But yeah, the Braves have just been in perpetual motion pretty much since day one of this season when it comes to creating their momentum. When it comes to winning series, the Braves have done it time and time and time again. And the byproduct of that, and that 45-21 record is you've got a large, biggest division lead in baseball, as a matter of fact. Let's get technical about it, of 10 games over the Philadelphia Phillies, who, as we've discussed, I mean, they got off to such a bad start, they fired their manager that they just signed to an extension. That's about how things were going up in Philly. They played a better brand of baseball, though I'm not ready to just point at Don Mattingly and say he did it. I think that the Phillies were just underperforming. That's as simple as it gets. And underperforming out of the gate, when another team is performing at a high level the way the Braves was, that is a bad combination. Now, we do know, not only for the 162, but also once you get into October, stranger things have happened in the world of baseball than a team that didn't win the division, having some luck once you get there and going on a run. But you got to, I guess, cover the ground between here and there, and then hopefully write your story in October. The Braves would very much like to do that. And if winning the division means they punch their ticket, well, really, that's their goal each and every year, to try to control whatever amount of your fate that you can control. But the Braves have overcome some injuries, some adversity, some slumps from certain players at certain times. But as we know, it takes a village to, I think, do the things that the Braves are doing. And we're seeing the completeness of this team really on display. And that's something that I think, when you're talking about being built for the long haul, what is your plan B some days when you don't have this guy available or when this guy is slumping? Who are you looking to? How are you able to make some different moves that could help you inside your own roster? How well is that roster constructed? Well, the answer for the Braves, I would say, is very well. We've talked a ton about Mauricio Dubón, his versatility. We saw him plugged into another position here on a rainy Sunday at Truist Park. We've talked about Jorge Mateo, and we're going to talk about him some more. We've seen what Dom Smith has been capable of doing, coming up with some big moments and really helping the Braves offense out. Mike Yastrzemski has swung a much better bat throughout the month of May into the month of June. That, I think, you needed to see. Just a lot of things that have gone right there. And we're going to get into all of that. But when it comes to what the Braves have done thus far, I think it's important to know that the experience that these guys have had in the past lets them know exactly how they want to chart this course for the rest of the year. And you might think, with a large lead, you could start making some different decisions in terms of maybe how you construct that lineup, maybe how you line up your starters for a series, maybe how you manage this, that, or the other, whatever the case is, because, hey, we've got a lead to work with. But just don't try selling that to Walt Weiss. Let's hear from the Braves skipper on what his outlook is on where the Braves stand and what they're still looking to accomplish day in and day out.
I'll never take that for granted. I've seen some crazy things in this league. Heck, we ran down the Mets a few years ago, I don't know what it was, 11 back or something like that. I think Detroit got run down from like 13 games up last year or something like that. So I know how quickly things can turn and the tide can turn in this league. So no taking the foot off the gas. Now, as far as the bullpen, we're always in tune with that, trying to get those guys to the finish line. Every once in a while I get to look at the bullpen from 10,000 feet and not just that night, especially that aspect of the club, right? So always in tune with those things, especially as it relates to our bullpen and the bigger picture, but no, never taking the foot off the gas.
I think that's something you love to hear. Slap that on a T-shirt. Because if that's your mantra and that's your motto, I think that there's just a lot of good that can come from it. There's certainly nothing bad, I don't think, that's going to come from that kind of thing, especially if you're in tune, as Walt Weiss said, with the things that you need to be aware of. This is not just going all out and creating a situation where you've overworked your entire bullpen or you've over-leveraged yourself in some other situation or you haven't given guys a day if they're aching and then all of a sudden an ache turns into an injury turns into an IL stint. The next thing you know, you're in a bad place. No, I think they've really been able to kind of take the guideposts where they need to, understand the decisions, and make the best ones for the individuals and for the club thus far. And as we'll always say, winning cures a lot of ills. But the Braves have not been without injury news, though. As we know, this year it started in spring training when Spencer Schwellenbach and Hurston Waldrop both needed to have elbow surgery. It was extended when Spencer Strider strained his oblique. Sean Murphy was on his way back from a hip surgery and ended up back on the injured list after just a week. Ha-Seong Kim injured his finger before spring training and came back and has not been the same player. And believe me, we'll get into that a little bit later. I can go on and on and on. But maybe the most disappointing in-season injury that we've seen thus far, because, I don't know, I was starting to get spoiled with what this kid's capable of doing, and that's Drake Baldwin, who's making a case, and I think still has a very strong case, to be the starting catcher for the National League in the All-Star game, which, as you may have seen, you may have heard somewhere if you watched a Braves game, that voting is open, and they want you to vote Braves. And they want you to do so dressed as though you were a signer of the Declaration of Independence, apparently. But, yeah, hey, it's America 250. I do understand it. We are going for a theme here. It's on brand. But jokes aside, there's been nothing funny about what Drake Baldwin's been doing here, nothing fluky. This is a kid that really showed you last year in winning Rookie of the Year what he's capable of doing and has taken it to a next level this year. So the oblique injury about 2 weeks ago in Miami is a disappointment for the club. Now, it did coincide with Ronald Acuna Jr. coming back off the IL and looking a lot more like Ronald Acuna Jr. lately, and not many clubs get that kind of, I'll say, golden parachute when you lose your best hitter to have another one come in and do those same things. But some things have worked out as far as serendipity is concerned. But you want to get Drake Baldwin back as soon as possible. He is eligible to come off already. Saw Drake this week. He's just started his baseball activities, is feeling like he's in a good place with this. But the Braves, as you might imagine, one of the benefits of having a 10-game lead in your division, among others, is you probably don't have to even think about feeling rushed into a decision to bring somebody back before they're absolutely ready. I don't think the Braves have ever really been in the business of that, but we're furthering the story here. But the good news is Drake Baldwin is trending in the right direction. Walt Weiss gave an update on his star catcher and when we can expect to see Drake Baldwin perhaps rejoin the Atlanta lineup.
A little ways to go, yeah. But he's feeling better. I think once he gets to the point where he's not feeling that thing at all, and he can take off. Still do think, there's a chance. I talked about that next homestand. I still think that's realistic, hoping that's the case. But, once he starts doing baseball activity, I think it'll move fast.
Yeah, I think it very well could, and that's the big thing. And baseball activities, that includes, obviously, throwing, swinging a bat, in particular for an oblique injury. That's a big hurdle to clear. Hasn't really gotten into all of that, some batting practice. And I don't know if he'll need a rehab game or two. If the Braves decide that he needs that, I'm sure they'll go down that road if they need to. But that homestand that Walt Weiss was alluding to is 9 days from now. It will be on the, 16th of June. It begins against the San Francisco Giants. Doesn't mean he comes off on the 16th, but at some point in that couple of series, I should say, we could see Drake Baldwin back in a Braves uniform and back in the lineup, back behind the plate, because, let's be honest, the catching has been probably the biggest high wire act the Braves have had to undergo this year, is how do we cover the innings? Not just for, hey, we lost Drake Baldwin, who'd been a primary catcher for us all year, and we lost his bat. But prior to that happening, the week leading up to it, Sean Murphy suffered a broken finger. Now, I saw Sean Murphy has the cast off now, and now he has a splint that he's wearing on a regular basis. I asked Walt Weiss about it, and he said, no, that doesn't really indicate that he's any closer to coming back. He's still kind of on that progression of, it's going to take a couple of months likely to heal, which means by some very simple math, another 4 to 6 weeks probably before we're really having a better idea of the timetable and the baseball activities begin again for Sean Murphy, which is just a shame. And I know a lot of folks have looked at Sean Murphy and felt like, hey, we haven't gotten what we need to out of him the last couple of years, and I understand that. The injury thing, though, is as big a frustration for the Braves as it is for anybody who's been watching out there. And this is one of those times where you would have liked to have Sean Murphy to help you work with that pitching staff and hopefully get himself back on track offensively. But that opportunity was taken from him, and then Drake Baldwin was taken out of the Braves lineup. So it was really a double whammy for Atlanta. So how are they covering for this? Well, we've seen over the past few weeks that Chadwick Tromp and Sandy León were looked upon as, at least for a little while, the answer for the Braves. And they were the answer because a lot of the Braves pitchers were very comfortable with both of them because Chadwick has been in the Braves organization for, I believe, the better part of 4 or 5 seasons now. And even Sandy León had been with the Braves in the minors in recent years. And Chris Sale was no stranger to Sandy León either, as those two gentlemen won a World Series in Boston in 2018. And Sandy's got a long resume. And I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but all the talk that we had about the Braves and the ABS Challenge struggles, nobody told Sandy León. Because it looks like every time, with the exception of, I think, one I saw earlier on Sunday, but just about every time, a high level of success for León. I think he's almost 80% in getting it right back there. And he got some right in some pretty big spots where you felt like, all right, that at bat could have gone a different way if the catcher had just chosen not to challenge right there. So making an impact there, I know that offensively speaking, you're not seeing the kind of things that you had become accustomed to for Braves catchers, but just being able to be that steady presence behind the plate has a ton of value. And Sandy León has been able to do that. It's not a long-term solution, but in the interim, you just wanted somebody who could help your pitching staff stay on task and on target, and I think Sandy León has done a great job of that. And so did Chadwick Tromp, to give him credit. But he was designated for assignment this week when the Braves went out and got Austin Wynns, who's a veteran catcher who's played with a whole bunch of clubs here, especially in recent years. He's bounced around an awful lot. Originally came up with Baltimore in 2018, 35-year-old backstop. He was a pretty good one last year in splitting some time between the Reds and the Athletics, and just a little bit more offensive upside, I think, than Chadwick Tromp is what it came down to. Probably a push in terms of defensively. I mean, you feel comfortable with Austin Wynns because, again, he's a big league catcher for the better part of 8 seasons in the majors, so you kind of know what you're getting there. Came pretty highly regarded, and we've seen him in action, but it's not a move that's made to, necessarily move the needle altogether that much, but you were just hoping to get maybe a little bit more offensively out of your catchers. And we've noticed with Walt Weiss as well, and I'll give him a lot of credit for this, talking about how he's managed the workload of the bullpen. But how about choosing the right time to pinch hit for guys? Choosing the right time to pinch run for a guy. Making a defensive replacement when you need to do that kind of thing. I mean, he did it again on Sunday, and it's just been impressive to watch as this season has come along that it's not just one guy or a couple of guys that you're expecting to be the ones that get the big hit. The Braves can rely all up and down the lineup on different guys at different times to come through. On Sunday, that guy was Michael Harris. And Michael Harris came off the bench to pinch hit for Sandy León with the bases loaded, and he cleared the bases with a double. Then you plug in Austin Wynns, and away you go. And Wynns is exactly what the Braves have been doing. They've been racking those things up. So it's been a pretty impressive run for Atlanta overall, and they've been able to overcome some of the areas in which you might have just wondered, I don't know how they're going to make this work without Drake Baldwin and Sean Murphy, and the Braves have made it work, to their credit, and to the credit of some veteran catchers. But it will be nice to welcome Drake Baldwin back at some point in the not-too-distant future on that next homestand. Fingers crossed that all is going well. A lot of other injury updates we'll be talking about as far as the pitching staff is concerned. Hurston Waldrop's out on a rehab assignment. We'll jump into that. And we will, of course, talk about some of the other possible pitching additions for the Braves a little bit further down the road. But when we come back, we're going to jump into the reserves, just how good this Braves bench has been and why it's one of the hallmarks of their success here in 2026. This is From the Diamond with Grant McAuley right here on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game and the Odyssey app.
Taking a look around the league with more of our From the Diamond with Grant McAuley.
Brought to you by Mark Spain Real Estate. Get a guaranteed offer on your home today. And Window Nation. Call the pros at Window Nation at 866-90Nation. Sports Radio 92.9 The Game.
Welcome back in to From the Diamond with Grant McAuley on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game. Close out the weekend on this Sunday. The rain has stopped for now, and the rain was not able to keep the Braves from their destiny of a sweep over the Pittsburgh Pirates, a 5-1 homestand, and continuing to add to the best record in Major League Baseball. That's what the Braves have been known for this year, is winning series, and they close this one out with a sweep, and they'll put themselves out on the road with a little bit of momentum. Not that they really had lost too much momentum at any point this year because they've only lost 2 series, but hey, you'll take all the good that you can possibly get. On this upcoming road trip, they're going to get a look at what I would call an improved White Sox team. I said that about the Pirates a little bit earlier, so it'll be an interesting challenge as they go up to Chicago. The Braves will, to play the White Sox for 3, and then they will play the New York Mets for 3. So renew hostilities with one of your division rivals, but one that, man, you start to look up and down the standings in baseball. I don't know if anybody, any single team can possibly be more disappointed than the New York Mets, sitting 16 games out of first place, buried in the cellar, 8 games under 500, and only the Dodgers have spent more money on their payroll than have the Mets. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We'll have plenty of time to talk about the Mets, their payroll, and all the other things, probably about this time a week from now when the Braves have actually played those games. But let's talk a little bit more about the keys to success for the Braves and why that depth that they have had this year has been such an important aspect of this club, because the Braves went out in the winter and they still needed to solve the shortstop problem. It's been a perpetual issue since Dansby Swanson left as a free agent after the 2022 season. You got a good year out of Orlando Arcia in 2023. I think you felt pretty confident about that, but it kind of turned back into a pumpkin in 2024. And all of a sudden you were looking at that position again and thinking, wow, we need more out of that position offensively. We need more out of that position probably defensively as well. Orlando has a great arm, but not known as one of the great fielders in baseball. But the Braves decided to, after 2025, having a really slick fielding shortstop in Nick Allen, that maybe they'd like to continue to have that be a trend. They brought in Ha-Seong Kim, a waiver claim in September, and decided to bring him back on a $20 million deal. But before any of that happened, before the re-signing of Kim happened, the Braves went out and traded for Mauricio Dubón, who has not 1, but 2 gold gloves in his trophy case and can play all over the place. And he had been your starting shortstop for most of the early portion of this year, but now all of a sudden you've got Ha-Seong Kim back in the shortstop role, but you also have Jorge Mateo, kind of out of nowhere, swinging a good bat, elite speed, giving you some contributions that you certainly, I don't think we're expecting out of a Jorge Mateo this year, and making a good case for some playing time. And by the time Ha-Seong Kim had gotten back, well, he just has not been able to get going at the plate. He's 5 for 52 thus far. Had no spring training, did a bunch of rehab to get ready for a rehab assignment, was out for about 10 days or so, and then kind of thrust back in. And I talked about this, I think, last week on the show. It just felt like Ha-Seong Kim has been that kid that missed the bus and is now running after the bus. It's like Tommy Boy. I believe that was one of those. I'm pretty sure I remember that being part of Tommy Boy, but I don't know. We'll leave that there. Ha-Seong Kim, meanwhile, in a little bit better shape than Chris Farley, but having some problems sticking the landing here in the early going. Just 5 for 52 thus far. That's an .096 batting average if you're scoring at home. And when you've got other offensive options that can help you out, like Mauricio Dubón and like Jorge Mateo, if you're the Braves, you probably want to figure out some ways to maybe give Ha-Seong Kim a little bit more time to get things right as far as his swing is concerned. Let's go ahead and hear Walt Weiss and his, sizing up the situation with the veteran shortstop Ha-Seong Kim, who, again, has been a very useful player over the course of his career and flashed that a year ago in his brief stint with the Braves, but has had some struggles here in 2026.
It's just going to take some time, and it's that fine line of getting him back up to speed, getting some work days, trying to catch up that way, and trying to juggle playing time for several guys. That's been the challenge for me, but it's a good thing. We got a lot of guys playing well, and I believe Kim's going to be a big part of this. We just, it's going to take a little bit of time, and so we're trying to help that process along. Work days, playing them, and gradually getting back up to speed. So, like I've said before, this guy's been a really good player in this league, and we think he's going to be that again.
Yeah, and I think he will be. And clearly, the Braves have not gotten the best of Ha-Seong Kim this year, but last year they got a quick look at him and felt like, look, we feel like if healthy, he can be more the player that he was in San Diego in 2023 when he batted .260 with 17 homers and 38 steals. The Gold Glove defense that he also had to show for that year, and then even the next year, really every year in San Diego other than his rookie season, double-digit homers and double-digit steals in addition to good defense. The Braves would like to see a bit more of that from Ha-Seong Kim, but I don't think you can afford to necessarily stubbornly put him out there and dig your heels in, nor do you have to right now, and that's the beauty of the depth, not with just Mauricio Dubón, but with Jorge Mateo in particular. And just kind of looking at Mateo, 39 games played now this year, hitting over 300. Home runs, stolen bases, a pinch running threat with elite sprint speed. I mean, these were some things that you just didn't have off the bench in recent years. At least if you had a little bit of it, you didn't have enough to go around. You didn't have options that you could be talking about. But Jorge Mateo has certainly given the Braves one. So I asked Walt Weiss a little bit about what he's seen from Mateo this year and the value that this reserve infielder with plus speed has brought to the Braves this year. And this is what Walt had to say.
I haven't seen a lot of him from the other side, but when I did, I always liked him. I actually brought his name up this winter when we were talking about the roster and that type of thing with Alex, and because Mateo always caught my eye because of the tools. The power and speed combo is still like high level. It's just like a lot of guys, I talk about the consistency in this league. It's hard to do that. It's hard to play well all the time. And so guys are always looking for that next level of consistency, and I think that's been him throughout his career. But the ability has always been eye-opening. You just never know when a guy like that is going to figure some things out and it's going to click. And sometimes it takes longer than others, but he's always been a really talented player. And like I said, I've always liked him. So it doesn't necessarily surprise me what he's done. But, like I said, he's been one of those unsung heroes on this roster that has helped us win several games. All of them have.
And the Braves have had, again, a few of those, as Walt Weiss just alluded to. A lot of help off the bench, whether it was Jorge Mateo or Mauricio Dubón, or Eli White, or whoever it may be. The Braves have just gotten a lot of different contributions from a lot of different places. And in the seventh inning, Mateo works a walk, which continued the Braves' rally, gave them their best scoring chance. It loaded the bases with 2 outs. Michael Harris comes in as a pinch hitter, and one double later, the Braves are sitting on a 3-2 lead and ultimately get a 3-2 win. So a lot of things worked themselves out as far as that's concerned, and Mateo has just kind of been right in the middle of all of that. And it's been a good thing to see, most certainly. But a guy that I think has really just kind of captured the imagination a little bit, if you will, of Braves fans, really from when they got to know him on the opening weekend with a walk-off grand slam, is Dominic Smith. And Dominic Smith has just continued to add just good at-bats and just quality, lengthening the lineup is the old saying, and hitting well over 300, 6 homers, 28 runs knocked in this year. And Walt has already praised the fact that you just get a good professional at-bat from Dominic Smith. But let's hear the Braves manager talking a little bit about how the DH situation changed for the Braves once they realized just how darn good Dominic Smith is.
I was on record often about the DH spot being fluid, but Dom kind of forced his way into that spot against right-handers. He's just swinging the bat too well, and it's too good of an at-bat to ignore. So, that changed. At some point. Of course, when Drake was here, we're using that spot for him a lot to keep him in the lineup without having to catch every day. So it's still somewhat fluid, not maybe as fluid as I originally thought coming into the season, because some guys have performed and have changed things. So, but yeah, the fact that, we got Dom in that lineup virtually every time we face a right-hander, it's been impactful for us because it's just a really good at-bat. Whether he ends up getting a hit or whatever, you just know it's going to be a good at-bat.
Well, the Braves were able to score 3 runs on just 1 hit in that 7th inning, and you know who started it out? Dominic Smith was the first guy who got himself on base. He drew a walk. Then it was followed by Mike Yastrzemski. Then it was followed by Jorge Mateo. And then you had the Braves getting the big hit off the bench. So, again, you're just able to make contributions, and the entire team ends up looking that much better for it because you're getting it from different places, and you don't even have to be the one that swings the bat to get the big hit, to be a contributor on this club. It's been a beautiful thing and a big part of how the Braves have played this year. But Dominic Smith is having himself, I would say, a renaissance type of year with the Braves, one of his best of his big league career. Just how much fun is he having, and just how exactly did he go about the process of very quickly becoming an important and integral part of this team? I had a chance to ask Dominic Smith about all of those things here this week at Truist Park. Here's my conversation with Dominic Smith. As you come over, new team, new hitting environment, all those good things. What's been your experience thus far with Tim Hires and with Darnell and with all the guys you've been working with?
Yeah, I think they're very just proactive, and at the same time, I think they understand it's no one approach and no one style. So they do a great job of learning each guy, seeing kind of what each person likes, what helps them go, what helps them tick, and at the same time learning their swing and how to motivate them to get the best out of them. So it's been very fun getting to be around Tim, and I had DC back with the Nationals, so had some familiarity. But as far as Tim, he's so just communicative, and we can talk hitting, talk to swing, and just kind of bounce ideas off of each other. And he sets us up with a great plan to go attack pitchers. So it's been fun this last couple months here.
Yeah, I got to sit down with him for about 10 minutes a couple weeks ago, which is not nearly enough time to talk hitting when you're working with 13 different guys. But just kind of from that, I guess, big picture perspective, he said the number one thing he's learned in his job is patience, because not everybody's at the same place. Not everybody needs the same things. And then Austin was telling me everybody kind of parses through information differently. So for you, what kind of information is helpful when you're planning or even just working through some things to kind of prepare yourself for a game?
Yeah, I think everything, as far as all the data, if we have it from their previous appearances, whether it be the last week, their trends, the last month's trends, and then even in the past, if I faced, a certain starter, a certain reliever. So he brings all that information to us. He game plans for us. And a lot of it is, him being honest with us and letting us know that we have a good lineup. So we have to be pretty proactive during the game as far as watching the pitcher, watching how they want to attack us, and from there, just really being a student of the game. So I think he does a great job, like I said, preparing the group. Our hitters meetings are very, very, I don't want to say lengthy, but they're informative. So you kind of have a great idea on how you're going to get attacked and what they like to do to us. And I think the more information you have is better for you to kind of build your plan. For me personally, I like to know a little bit of everything. I want to know all of his pitches, kind of similarities, if it's a pitcher out there who has pitch type similarities, whether if he's a similar splitter guy or if his curveball is similar to a guy we just faced. I think all that information is huge, and he does a great job on kind of reiterating, similarities and even like arm angles and kind of, trends on league average if their stuff is above or below, and just building it off of that. So, like I said, it's very thorough, and pretty much everything that you should and more about each pitcher. So your plan is kind of easier to go out there and just go play.
Well, a lot of data, a lot of information, obviously, but your swing seems to be working pretty well this year thus far. You've had a couple of months to get kind of acclimated with this team and with this lineup. As you said, it's a very good group, a very talented group. How are you feeling at the plate thus far? And has there been some things that maybe you worked through the winter, even into the spring, to kind of incorporate this year that have led to a lot of success this year?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is, I think as a ball player, it's our job to kind of always try to get better, always trying to grow. So for me, I take things that I learned from last year, try to implement it to my game this year, and then also being around a lot of talented players, just picking their brains and seeing them play, seeing their approaches and their swings. I mean, guys like, Baldy and Oli and Mike and Ronald, obviously. And, these guys are, legit players who've been doing it for a while. And, you can kind of learn, and that's what I try to do. And when I come here, I try not to put too much pressure on myself and take some pressure off of them too. And like I said, we have a good team, so a lot of credit goes off to them, because every time I look up, it seems to be guys on base, or we're wearing a pitcher down as far as fouling off pitches or working good at bats. So I get a lot of information before I even step to the box, and when I collect all the information, I just make my game plan simple, which is try to get a good pitch to hit in the middle of the plate and just try to hit a line drive somewhere and not do too much. So it's been fun. I've seen these guys do it from afar my whole career, so to see it up close, it's been a really good ride, just because of how selfless this whole group is, and there's no egos. I think the main goal is to win, and I think you see that the team at bats and the team goal every night is whatever it takes to get a win, and that's all we care about. So it's just been fun.
Yeah, been seeing a lot of that, been hearing a lot of that as well. A little bit of the ride is behind us. A lot is left to go. Dom, appreciate your time, and good luck the rest of the way.
I appreciate it, Grant. Thanks very much.
That was Braves DH Dominic Smith. Really fun to to catch up with him. Just a genuine dude and a guy that's been a heck of a hitter for the Braves this year. So great little conversation there here on From the Diamond. When we come back, we're going to get into another conversation I had, which was so good I couldn't really leave any of it on the cutting room floor. So we're going to spend a lot of time here on the show with Braves legend David Justice. He, of course, hit the game-winning home run in the 1995 World Series. He was part of so many big, important Braves moments and memories that were created throughout the course of the 90s. I got to pick his brain about those at his bobblehead night on Tuesday. David was pretty excited about that whole thing. We'll talk about all of that and some reflections on the great Bobby Cox coming your way as well, as David Justice joins From the Diamond when we come back.
I love baseball. Now back to more Grant McAuley and From the Diamond.
Brought to you by Mark Spain Real Estate. Get a guaranteed offer on your home today. And Window Nation. Call the pros at Window Nation at 866-90Nation. Sports Radio 92.9 The Game.
We'll talk more about what's coming up for the Braves, but let's jump in our Wayback Machine and talk about a great time in Braves history. And as a young baseball fan, a young Braves fan, one of the TBS kids, I feel confident in saying this, I don't know what I expected out of the 1990s. I don't think that at 10 years old you really have any expectations out of a particular decade that involve a lot of deep thinking, but every year you come in and you kind of hope, if you're a fan of a team, that, hey, this may be our year. And for the Braves in the 1980s, save very early on in years I cannot remember vividly, the Braves really didn't have a whole lot of maybe it's our year that lasted too incredibly long. Because as that decade wore on, we pretty much were accustomed to watching Dale Murphy and a whole bunch of other guys trying to figure it out on an annual basis. But as the 80s wore on, you started to see little glimpses of what was going to be the Braves' future. In 1987, you started to see names like Tom Glavine and Ron Gant and Jeff Blauser. You started to see more of those names. Mark Lemke comes along. And then all of a sudden in 1989, the Braves brought up an outfielder turned first baseman named David Justice to give him an opportunity to start to ply his craft at the big league level. And I think we all knew David Justice is probably not going to be a first baseman because that really was not his position. But where did he fit in this great Braves farm system that you were looking to turn into stars at the big league level? You knew he was going to fit somewhere because that swing was just too darn sweet. One of the sweetest swings you will ever see. And at no time was that more on display than Game 6 of the 1995 World Series when David Justice cranked a solo home run that turned out to be the only run in the deciding game of the Braves World Championship over the Cleveland Indians. Just an incredible moment. It backed Tom Glavine's 8 innings of shutout ball. Mark Wohlers came on, got those final 3 outs, and I really had to have the whole story, not just from my view as a young fan who saw the Braves who'd gone worst to first in 91, came so close to winning a World Series, only to have the Minnesota Twins prevail in 7. To go back to the World Series on the strength of Sid Bream's sprint speed in 1992, only to come up short against the Blue Jays. To run down the San Francisco Giants in the second half of 93, only to get knocked down to the NLCS by the Phillies. Then you had to overcome the work stoppage of 1994, which kind of flattened things out a little bit heading into 95. But for the Braves, the mission remained the same. They'd gotten there. They had tasted it, but they had not been able to claim a World Series title. But David Justice changed all that. So here's my conversation with one of the great Braves of really any generation. I think he could play today. If a David Justice were to come along, if you had a time machine, this is a guy that could excel in any era. And it was my genuine pleasure to sit down with David to get his thoughts on that wonderful 1995 World Championship team. Here, Braves Hall of Famer David Justice. Always a fun time, I'm sure, to come out to the ballpark and see the Braves and kind of be around the club again, but also a bobblehead for you, the second one of those, and a pretty special moment that it captures as well. 1995 World Series, a home run that a lot of Braves fans are never going to forget. What do you remember about that night?
I just remember, off the top of my head, the level of pressure that we had on us because Cleveland was a great team, and nobody wants to play a Game 7. You know, I'd already been a part of a Game 7, and it didn't turn out great for us, you know, in Minnesota. So there was a lot of pressure that night. And then also because I was getting a lot of heat for the comments that I had made. So it was an extra pressure on myself. But we had such a great team, and we had Glavine on the mound, and I liked our chances, but you never know, right? Because I think back to those Game 6. Remember when Kirby Puckett hit the home run? I pushed the Game 7. So you like your chances, but you just know the other team is just as good as you are. I mean, they're here for a reason as well. But that night, I just remember, of course, I remember getting booed when they announced my name and running on the field, all that stuff. I remember all that stuff like it was yesterday. But I also remember it was packed. It was a packed house, you know, and there was just a certain level of energy that was in the stands. And whether that was because I had made my comments and they were going to come out and prove me wrong, that they really don't act like it's a tennis match, that they really do cheer, but you could feel a different energy. And I just remember personally for me, I wanted to give my best 4 at-bats. I always thought like that. You know, it doesn't, you know, everything comes down to one game at a time, one at-bat at a time, and I want to give my best at-bats, 4 at-bats, pitch by pitch. That's what I was telling myself. But I remember being in on-deck circle, saying to myself, God, you have put me in a lot of tough situations, and you have always brought me out. Please bring me out of this one. Because there was a lot of pressure on me, y'all. I mean, I felt like I was playing in a hostile environment for me personally, even though I'm at home and trying to win a World Series. So I just remember that, and I remember when they announced my name, you know, now batting number 23, right fielder David Justice. I remember hearing some boos. But then I just put a little smile on my face for a second. I heard some people cheering. And one of my good buddies is coming tonight, Ryan Cameron, who's a big radio personality here.
Oh, yeah, I know Ryan.
I remember Ryan having a sign, Justice, you're our man, and you know, he had his jersey on and hat. I remember all that. And I just remember saying to myself, okay, I'm going to play for the few people that are cheering for me. And so I went to go play. And what was amazing about that night is, you know, my first at-bat I walked, my second at-bat I doubled into the gap, and then the third at-bat came up. And I just remember, we don't know Jim Poole. Right. You know, remember, this is before Interleague. But I remember in the bottom of the 5th inning, Fred striking out on 3 straight curveballs that were in the dirt. And all 3 of them would have been balls, because I'm in on-deck circle watching. And as I'm sitting in the outfield, top of the 6th, I'm thinking, okay, what's going to be my game plan? Because, you know, we're getting down, this is a 0-0 game, and we're running out of at-bats, you know. And I just remember thinking, okay, I'm just going to stay on the fastball until 2 strikes, because he doesn't throw his curveball for strikes, is what I was thinking. So when I let off the bottom of the 6th, I was on the fastball every pitch. First pitch fastball away, called a strike. Second pitch fastball away, called a ball. And I remember, before that 1-1 count, I remember stepping out and saying, okay, if there's ever a time he's going to throw me a curveball, it's going to be right now. But I'm going to take it. I'm going to take it because I need to see it as a strike. I need a reference point, you know. But I'm going to stay on the fastball. Yeah. Even though there is no report on me that says throw Justice all fastballs. That report does not exist. And so I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, well, I'm staying on the fastball. And he threw the fastball. Meant to throw it away. I saw Tony Pena, from seeing the videos, of course. Tony Pena was sitting up outside, and he missed location. And he threw it middle in, and like Jimmy Williams used to say, you can't throw me inside because I'll quick snatch you. And I quick snatched him. And as soon as I hit it, I knew it was gone. Yeah. Like, as soon as I hit it. Funny thing about hitting home runs is you can hit a home run that will clear the fence by 2 inches. But you know it's a home run. Yep. You just know. I just know. And I knew I didn't hit it 500 feet, but I knew I got him. And as I'm going to first base, I put my hand up like I always do and get my customary pump of my fist. And as I'm rounding second base, now I'm coming back. I always say, you're coming back toward the fans now, you see. And of course, the place is going crazy and a lot of clapping and stuff. And I just remember when I round third base, you know, all the emotions of the day, because I had to answer a lot of media was in my face that day about the things that I had said, you know. And I stood on what I said. I was dead serious. Cleveland was unbelievable when we went to Cleveland. Their fan support was on another level. And when I got traded to Cleveland, I was able to see it on a daily basis. We had the greatest fans, Cleveland. So, and our fans, now that I'm older and I understand sports and I understand things from a different perspective, you know, our fans had been jaded. No, 1991 was the year. Yeah. Now, our 1991 was like Cleveland's 95. You know, so 91, then 92, and now, you know, we don't win. 93, the Phillies beat us. 94, the strike. 95, we're back. And I can understand now how our fans could be a little bit more reserved.
Yeah.
But at that time, I couldn't understand it. But when I crossed home plate, man, just the level of emotions knowing that I just hit a home run, we're up 1-0. And I really thought that we were about to blow the game over. Like, I really thought. And I just remember in the top of the 9th inning, being in the right field, I'm like, God, don't do me like this. Please don't do me like this. Don't let Kenny Lofton. Matter of fact, Kenny Lofton is my man. We see each other all the time. I just saw him last week. Kenny Lofton is a Hall of Famer, in my opinion. And I always sing his praises when I see him. You know, he's sensitive, though. He is a sensitive dude. But Kenny Lofton was leading off the 9th. And I said, Lord, please don't let Kenny Lofton get on. If Kenny Lofton get on, he's going to steal second and third. Yeah. It's going to be a ground ball. We're 1-1, and here we go again. And when Kenny popped that ball up, and Billy Hart caught it, I said, we're going to win the World Series. We're winning it now. We're winning now. I remember they pinch hit Sorrento, I think. They pinch hit Sorrento. And he got out, and then here comes Baerga. And Baerga hadn't really done anything the whole series, so I was just ready. You're in right field, I'm ready for, he's a left-handed hitter too, I'm ready to make this play. And when he first hit it, I thought it was gone. Oh my God. If they had a camera on me when he first hit it, I was leaning back in right field. I was like leaning like this. Same thing I did when Piazza hit it in my 2000 World Series in New York. Mm-hmm. When Piazza hit it off Mariano, I was leaning on that one too, because it looked like he got him. Yeah. But when I looked over and I saw Marquise rounding it, oh my God, I could get chills right now in this jacket. Yeah. Marquise catches it, and I'm like, oh my God, we just won the World Series. And I don't even know if I answered your question. I forgot the question, but
I can tell you this, all the memories that encompass that night for you and from your perspective, and that is certainly something that people want to know, because you're the one who was out there living it. There was a lot of talk coming into it about getting the fans back on your side, getting them energized, and I would say you were able to do that. Tom Glavine went out there and did his thing for 8 innings. I heard he just went into the dugout and said, just get me the one.
I didn't even hear that.
You definitely got him the one.
I was leading off the inning. So I didn't hear that. No, I didn't hear it. But got to remember now, he's going to get to the dugout before me. Yeah. Because I'm coming from right field. He's just coming from the pitcher's mound. So he might have said it as he walked in. I'm coming in through the other side of the dugout, walking down. So I didn't hear it. I was just getting ready for my at-bat. But, man, that's great that he says, just give me one. Yeah. And then I'm up first, and we get one.
And you're the guy that was able to get it there. Oh, yeah. Now, you played for the Braves in a very special time. Obviously, 1991, you mentioned, was an incredible, a magical turnaround for the Braves. Mm-hmm. Bobby Cox, the manager of those clubs, many of those great clubs. He was the executive before that. You played for him for a number of years, and obviously, as part of Braves country, we're mourning the loss of Bobby Cox. Could you reflect a little bit on the impact that he had on your career? Because he brought you, I'm sure, into the organization, along in the organization, and moved you from first base to right field when they traded a franchise icon in Dale Murphy. That was quite a moment for you, a launching pad, if you will.
Okay, so I'm in AAA, and the Braves come to me and they say, have you ever played first base? And I go, yeah, I played first base. Because as a kid, I'm left-handed. As a kid, I pitched and played first base. And so they said, well, the Braves want you to play right field tonight. And I'm like, oh, yeah, cool, no problem. So I'm at first base with my outfield glove. I don't even have a first base mitt. And I played that night in AAA, and the next day the Braves called me to the big leagues to play first base in the major leagues.
Did you get the mitt?
I got a new mitt. I got a cup. I had never worn a cup.
Probably need that.
I got a cup. Yeah, I would recommend that. I got a cup. And now I'm squatting 100 times a day, taking ground balls. And a routine ground ball at the major league level is a rocket. Mm-hmm. I'm used to being 300 feet away. I'm not used to being on top of the game. And I was miserable at first base because we still had Murph, but they called me up to play first base. And Clarence Jones later told me that had I played a good first base, they would have kept me at first. Wow. Which I didn't know that. Huh. I thought I was just playing first base until Murph was done, and then they moved me back to right. But I played first base so badly that they realized that this project is not going to work. So we went and got Sid Bream in 91. Yep. But in that year when they called me up to play first base, I'm not a first baseman. I got so many funny stories I could have here for 20 minutes on the things that happened to me at first base. Like the funny thing, like Tim Raines. Never forget Tim Raines gets on first base, and I go, hey, Tim, if you steal and we pick you off, I'm going to hit you in the back of the head. Because for some reason, I could never see Blauser at shortstop. So when I catch it and look, all I can see is the runner.
Yeah.
And if we did not pick him off, we did. And I step forward and look, and I hit Tim Raines in the back of the helmet, a laser. In the back of the helmet, boom, it goes to center field. He goes to third. He's at third looking at me like I'm going, I told you. I told you.
You put it
I
out
got
there.
so many funny stories of me playing first base, but I remember when they traded Dale and coming into the clubhouse, it was two things. One is there were times during the year when I was playing first base that when they gave Dale a day off, they didn't put me in right. Mm-hmm. It was like Tommy Gregg.
Yeah.
So when we trade Murph and I walk in, I'm thinking, I'm sideways looking at the lineup, hoping I see a 9 behind my name because that's the number for right field. And as I glance like this, I see a 9. I'm like, I think I'm going to right field. Because seriously, I thought I was going to be the first baseman. And when they put me in right, now, that coincided with Clarence Jones, our hitting coach. I give so much credit to my success to Clarence Jones because I met Clarence when I was 20 in A-ball. And it was like God put the right hitting coach for me in my life. So I had so much time with Clarence. My success in the minor leagues were due to him teaching me how to think, from the shoulders up. Well, anyway, Clarence Jones comes to me on that day, and he says to me, hey, listen, I want you to get on top of the plate. I want you to stand up tall. Here's what's going to happen. These pitchers are going to pitch you inside because they see you on top of the plate. They're going to try to jam you. Yeah. Clarence knew that, like myself and Ronnie Gant, I used to joke, if you stood on the mound with a .45 caliber pistol and you shot it over home plate, Ronnie Gant and I would pull that bullet foul. That was the type of bat speed that we had. So he says to me, I want you to stand up tall. I want you to get on top of the plate. They are going to start pounding you inside, and you're going to get them. And he said, it'll be 2 weeks left in the season when they realize they can't pitch you inside like that. Mm-hmm. He said, if you do this, your home runs, your RBIs, batting average, everything will go up, and you'll be back in a race for Rookie of the Year. Mind you, I wasn't even thinking about Rookie of the Year. Right. I'm just trying to play first base and just as a rookie, just trying to fit in. Oh, yeah. So we're playing San Diego, and Eric Shaw's on the mound, and I go right into what CJ told me to do. I mean, you got to understand, I totally changed everything from that day, from the previous day to that day. I hit 11 home runs in 15 days. I'm on Brian Gumble. I'm on the morning show with Kevin Moss. I had 23 home runs the second half of the season. Me and Cecil Fielder had the most home runs in all of baseball in the second half of the season. And it was almost to the day, 2 weeks left in the season, when the pitchers started changing the way they pitched me. Because before then, everybody was trying to throw me inside. They were like, there's no way he can, gone. There's no way, gone. I remember being in St. Louis. Vince Coleman, who is my buddy now, a former Rookie of the Year like myself. I come in and he goes, hey, Rook, we got a guy throwing tonight 95 miles an hour. You're not going to do that against him. And I said, hey, Vince, you play left field. I haven't hit a ball to left field in 44 at-bats. When I come up, you can just put your glove on the ground and just hang out with the fans. I think my second at-bat, Ken Hill throws me a fastball, and I shoot him in the stands. Home run. I couldn't wait to see Vince the next day. But Bobby, because, they put me in my natural position, right field, and you don't appreciate your manager until you leave. Because when that's all you know, you have no comparisons. I had no comparisons to Bobby. So when I went to Cleveland, and I saw how Cleveland ran their clubhouse, and our manager was totally different than Bobby. Mm-hmm. That's when I was able to really appreciate Bobby. Now, Bobby was a man of few words, very few words. But I just remember, you better show up on time, and you better play hard. But that, to me, that was the Braves way, though. We learned that in the minor leagues. That was just instilled in us. So once we got to the major leagues, that was kind of natural to play hard and be on time. But that also kept me out of Bobby's office. You see?
Yeah.
I've never had a conversation with Bobby longer than 5 minutes my whole entire career, because I don't hang out down by Bobby during the game. And I always say, I don't ever get called to the principal's office. I'm going to play hard, and I'm going to be on time. Yeah. So all I remember Bobby is, now I remember Bobby being the type of manager who, if he sees me talking to an umpire and it looks like there's a situation, he'll run out there. Hey, what's going on here? I'm talking to my player today. What's going on? Was everything good? Okay. I mean, don't you be talking to my player. Right? I'm like, oh, Bobby, we good. Bobby was a fighter for us. And I would say Bobby was the manager who, when we were doing well, it seemed like he always gave the credit to the players. When we weren't doing well, it seemed like he'd always take all of it on himself, you know? So Bobby created a culture and an environment that made you want to come and play baseball. Like, I was excited every day when I showed up. Every single day I showed up with the Braves. We just had great teammates, a lot of guys I played in the minor leagues with. You know, we had a great, camaraderie with our team, a band of brothers, but the environment is what the manager is responsible for. And Bobby built that environment. It made us really want to come and play hard. Not to mention, we also had great coaches, man. Jimmy Williams, Pat Corrales, Jim Beecham, Clarence Jones. Our coaching staff were committed to our success as well. And they were funny. You know, they were funny and great. You know what I mean? Like, you play 162 games, see guys every day. There has to be some joy somewhere. Exactly. You got to have laughs. You got to have all that. And we had the best coaching staff for that, boy. Pat Corrales would almost have he'd have a heart attack every time he saw Smoltz out in the outfield running to catch fly balls on the days he wasn't pitching. Smoltz would be out there trying to catch everything. Yeah. And Pat Corrales would be like, hey, Smoltz, stop doing that. You're messing with my money. Because, you know, the coaches made all their money in the playoffs, right? So he would be yelling, and we'd be laughing. Because Smoltz is out there like he's trying to make the team. Like we need an extra outfielder. Smoltz going to be the outfielder. But it was great playing for Bobby. Obviously, Bobby was the GM when I was in the minor league, so a huge part of my chance of playing in the big leagues, you know. And I know it's part of life, you know, but it's amazing when you see all those guys start to leave this earth. You know what I mean? And you just start to reflect on, no matter how great a manager you are or player, there's going to come a day in which, you know, your time is going to be up. You know what I mean? And I was fortunate to play for a great manager in Bobby Cox. And it's sad that he's gone, you know, but Braves fans will always remember him. Yeah. And, you know, if he doesn't have it already, he'll probably have a statue around here one day.
He's got one.
Oh, he got one already? Okay, well, good. See, I didn't even know that.
They took care of that.
Okay, good. So Bobby will always be remembered, and as he should be. And he touched a lot of lives. But for me personally, he just always gave me the confidence to come and play hard and play. And we always had a great relationship, even though we really didn't talk a lot, because Bobby wasn't a man of a lot of words, you know.
Well, David, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it. Great memories, great legacy as well, and a great time with Braves baseball. Always great to see you at the ballpark.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
All right, play ball! Your place for all things MLB and our Braves. This is From the Diamond.
Brought to you by Mark Spain Real Estate. Get a guaranteed offer on your home today. And Window Nation. Call the pros at Window Nation at 866-90Nation. Sports Radio 92.9 The Game.
Welcome back into From the Diamond with Grant McAuley here on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game. Wrapping up the show, wrapping up the weekend for the Atlanta Braves as well, as they were able to finish up a sweep of the Pittsburgh Pirates. Ahead for the Braves as they head up to Chicago to take on the White Sox. That's going to get started on Tuesday after the off day on Monday. So we'll get into that before we get out of here. But a few other things to talk about, including one of the big highlights from Sunday. And that, of course, was Michael Harris. And Michael had missed, and not started, I should say, a couple of games. After coming out of Friday's game late, he reached on a drop third strike and then came out of the game in the ninth inning. The Braves, of course, went on to win that, but Eli White checked into center field, so a lot of folks immediately, the antenna goes up and says, okay, what's going on with Michael Harris? Well, Walt Weiss was very quick to say, yeah, just some back tightness. We didn't want to take any chances. Pulled him out of the game. could be available tomorrow. Well, on Saturday, he didn't play, but could be available at some point in the game. We didn't see Michael Harris. And then on Sunday, we do see Michael Harris at the most important particular at-bat of the entire game in the 7th inning as he pinch hit and laced a 3-run double that ended up giving the Braves their 3-2 victory over the Pittsburgh Pirates. So pinch hitting for Michael Harris II, that works just fine as well. He picked up 3 more runs batted in this game. And for Harris, that gets him up to 40 on the year. So I was doing some quick and dirty math, I guess, if you want to call it that. That sounds wrong, but it's right. A 30-plus homer season and 100-plus runs batted in is what Michael Harris is on pace for, in addition to hitting well over 300. And this, I feel like, is the best and most complete version of Michael Harris that we have seen, really since probably either his rookie season or the second half of 2023. If you kind of go back and look into that. That was really when I felt like Michael Harris was at his absolute best because he got into June hitting well under 200. And then that first week or so, he had that walk-off hit against the New York Mets. And that, of course, was, something that I think everybody kind of felt good about because the Braves and Mets kind of had that rivalry brewing around that time. And 2022 was the crazy part. And that was Michael's rookie year. But in 23, he'd gotten hurt early and just didn't look like himself, didn't look like the same player. But from that point on, from like the second week of June to the end of the season, Michael Harris hit .330 and OPS .950. And that started this whole thing. If you've listened to 92.9 The Game for a while, then you would know that every spring I would come on shows, talk about the Braves, preview the season, and somebody would say, all right, who are you looking for to really break out this year? And I said, Michael Harris. And a bunch of people would be excited about that. And then other people would say, wait. You can't pick Michael Harris as a breakout candidate because he's already won the Rookie of the Year. He's already broken out. Everybody already knows who he is. But I was like, yes. Okay, I get that. But I think Michael Harris has another level. And I think we're seeing the next level of Michael Harris this year. We're seeing the power, we're seeing the clutch, and we're seeing what Walt Weiss had described as better swing decisions. That might seem like an innocuous thing, like, oh, well, what does that mean? Well, Michael Harris is a great contact hitter, but even in making his contact, especially in 2025, it wasn't quality contact. Pitchers were, even though he could get the bat to it, they were inviting him to swing at things that would cause a lot more ground balls. And even though he was hitting the ball hard, a lot of times if your ground ball rate is too high, it really doesn't matter if you're hitting it as hard as you want to because you're not hitting it where you need to. And that's really the difference, I think, between the Michael Harris we saw start out in 2025. And he figured this out as the year went along, especially right around the All-Star break when he moved his hands back up. And you heard Tim Hires on the show about 3 weeks ago now. If you haven't, from the Diamond, wherever you get your podcast, you can go subscribe. You can also hear my conversation with Tim because he did go in depth about Michael Harris making that change. And that really unlocked things for him because he was comfortable with it, because that's how he was as an amateur. That's how he came up through the minor leagues. It was not until he got to the big leagues that he dropped his hands down, kind of like Ronald Acuna Jr. had, and it was something that worked for him for the better part of nearly 3 years. So when talking to Michael last year, I said, I just wasn't sure I was ready to make a wholesale change because I've had success before. And that, I think, is kind of the dance that hitters do inside of this game, which is incredibly hard, in which the best hitters typically make an out 7 out of 10 times, at least as far as hits versus outs are concerned. You draw some walks, we can split hairs, and you can have a higher on-base percentage, and I'll appreciate you even more because you're a great player. But Michael Harris is doing his thing this year, and the swing decision improvement is a big reason why he has looked so much better this year. Producing like the guy that you really thought that after winning the Rookie of the Year he was set up to become. Braves signed him to a long-term deal, homegrown kid. There's so much to like about Michael Harris, but he'd really kind of had these peaks and valleys, this Jekyll and Hyde thing going on. And in 2026, it would appear that Michael Harris has solved at least a few of the things that were ailing him and has found the consistency that he's been looking for the past couple of years especially. 30 homers, 100-plus runs batted in. We'll see if he can make a run at 20 or 30 stolen bases. He's done 20 before. Could we see Michael Harris 30-30 guy one day? Possibly. Probably need to heal up the back a little bit, do a little bit more running after that. But, boy, Michael Harris has been one of the highlights of the Braves here in 2026. It's the clutch hits, the great fielding as well. I mean, he just keeps making catches that they may not all end up on the highlight reel, the SportsCenter top 10, but you just watch a couple times a night. You'll see a ball go up into the air, and you'll start doing, as I do, okay, what's the trajectory of that? How close is that going to get to the wall? Is that getting out of here? All of a sudden, Michael Harris pulls up on the warning track, makes the catch. I call it the Andrew Jones effect. Not many guys have that innate ability to, if the ball's in the air and it stays in the park or relatively close and can be pulled back into the park, there's a very good chance Michael Harris is going to make that catch. It's one of the things that makes him such a special player. Speaking of special players, Ronald Acuna Jr., looking a lot more like Ronald Acuna Jr. lately. The Braves have won 8 of their last 10 after sweeping away the Pirates here on Sunday. And Ronald Acuna Jr. is 12 for 36 with 5 homers, 10 runs knocked in, 9 more runs scored, and 7 stolen bases over his last 10 games. If you're going to lose to Drake Baldwin, it certainly helps to get a prime-looking Ronald Acuna Jr. back in there, and it does appear that Ronald has solved some of the things for him that, again, maybe a little mechanical adjustment, closing the stance a little bit, helping him get to those fastballs that millisecond quicker, and it makes all the difference. And we've seen some of that from Ronald Acuna Jr. here lately. But while you might be expecting to hear a lot about the offensive exploits of a Michael Harris or a Ronald Acuna Jr. or Drake Baldwin or Matt Olson or on and on and on the list goes, what about the defensive improvement for the Braves this year? Because they had been kind of a middle to back end of the pack of Major League Baseball as far as fielding was concerned. And you might not have expected to hear that because for so many years, Ron Washington was here drilling these guys. And it wasn't that they weren't making the plays necessarily that were hit at them. They just, range-wise, maybe weren't in the right place. Just weren't on the bleeding edge of the best defensive clubs in baseball. But that has changed this year. The Braves have been, I think, a top 5 defensive club in Major League Baseball. Michael Harris is a big part of that. But someone else who's really contributed to it, first baseman Matt Olson, putting up the kind of defensive numbers that you typically don't get from a first baseman, which is usually a position where, when you talk about wins above replacement, you kind of get dinged for playing first base, which is interesting. But Matt Olson has kind of bucked that trend, and he's looked awfully good this year. But the man immediately to his right, second baseman Ozzie Albies, has looked much better in the field. And that, I think, is something that's very encouraging because you know it's not going to be the top arm, and typically your second baseman's not your best infield arm anyway. But it just seemed like for Ozzie the last couple of years, it wasn't quite at the same level it was early on in his career, and I kind of wondered why that was. Well, there are a couple of things that I think played into it. When baseball banned the shift, you stopped seeing Austin Riley run his 5 miles back and forth from third base to shallow right field. When you had Austin Riley out there, you could move Ozzie Albies into some different spots, and I think he was the beneficiary of making the plays that he needed to make, and his range factor would show you that, hey, Ozzie's probably one of the 5 or so best second basemen in Major League Baseball. But when the shift went away, there was, if you'll pardon the pun, a shift in Ozzie Albies' quality in the field. As far as outs above average are concerned, this is a StatCast thing. So if you're into the nerdy stats, here you go. We waited until the end of the show. We're going to give you some. In 2023, he was negative 10 outs above average. One of the least valuable as far as fielding second basemen are concerned. 2024, he missed some time, negative 2 outs above average. Here in 2025, he is 5 outs above average. He is back into the plus for the first time since 2022. And I look at this stuff and I wonder, does it match the eye test? And I think it does. So I looked at range, 93rd percentile on StatCast. Great to see that. That means he is in and among the best fielding second baseman you're going to find in baseball at 5 outs above average. Then I looked at Fangraphs because you can't just look at one stat site. You got to look at them all and see who thinks that Ozzie Albies is the best or how exactly they're breaking it all down. Fielding run value is what Fangraphs uses is basically their outs above average. He's at +3 there, which puts him at number 4 among all qualified second basemen as far as best fielding second baseman in baseball. So I went back and looked. All right, well, how bad was he on this metric last year? He was in the negative there. He was 22nd among, I believe it's 40 players that played at least 500 innings at second base. You didn't have this level of Ozzie Albies. So what does it all mean? I don't know. It's an improvement. It's an incremental improvement, and you like to believe that guys under 30 can make those, and Ozzie certainly has. But we caught up with Walt Weiss this week, and we talked a little bit with him about what exactly he's seen from Ozzie Albies when it comes to the improvement in the field.
Look, Ozzie's been good. He's having a good year all around. I'm not someone that puts a ton of stock in defensive metrics. I just think they can be really deceiving. I think the best way to judge defense is with a trained eye. I've always believed that. But, you know, I'm not completely disregarding the metrics. But I know that Ozzie's playing good defense. I don't need the numbers to tell me that. And sometimes the numbers tell a different story. You know, be ranked in one category in the top 5 and another category he's last in the league. You know, players are like that, you know, and so it's hard to buy into it completely. But I do think it's a reference, you know, the metrics, but I don't it's not the end all be all, like you said. But Ozzie's playing well. He's worked really hard, man. And like I said, the injury thing is a real thing. I mean, when guys start racking up injuries and start racking up missed time, this game becomes really difficult. And I think Ozzie's had to deal with that the last couple of years. Like I said last night, I mean, he's back to who we know him to be. and he's impacting the game on both sides. He's so sure-handed. He's always been so sure-handed. When the ball is hit to him, he catches the ball. I mean, he doesn't miss the ball, and that sounds very elementary, but he's been doing it year after year after year. When the ball is hit to him, he catches the ball, no matter how tricky the hop and where he's going left, where he's going right. So very, very sure-handed. So it doesn't surprise me that his metrics are good.
It's kind of fun to hear a manager who looks at it and says, okay, I am all in on having the information, but I got to see it. I've got to parse through it through my lens. And Walt Weiss is a very good fielding shortstop in his career, certainly knows a thing or two about this. But Ozzie Albies, a year ago, even in a year where you would look at it and say, okay, well, maybe he wasn't a great fielding second baseman, still led all second basemen in fielding percentage, which is the most rudimentary of metrics, if you will, but he doesn't make many errors. He's made one this year. He made two all of last year. So to Walt Weiss's point, Ozzie Albies does make those plays. But to Walt Weiss's other point, Ozzie has improved his defense and has looked a lot more like the hitter you expect him to be. He's on pace for a 25-plus homer season. He's on pace to drive in 90 runs again. He's hitting 275. His OPS is approaching 800. And even though he's had some at times where he's been incredibly hot, maybe cooled off a little bit, you still feel like this looks and sounds and feels a lot more like the Ozzie Albies the Braves need to have, because the injuries have been no joke for him. The broken wrist, broken toe, broken bone in his hand last year. I mean, he's went through a lot of stuff. So to see him operating at this level is good to see. Now, speaking of injuries, a couple of updates before we get out of here on some Braves pitchers. Hurston Waldrop has made two inning appearances in the Florida Complex League. So his rehab assignment has begun. That would put him on track, I would imagine, for early July, first couple of days in July, to make a decision on whether or not he might rejoin the big league staff. He does have options, of course, so the Braves could continue to have him work and make starts at the AAA level until they deem that he is needed. And you might be wondering, well, why would they do that? Well, right now, the Braves rotation, knock on wood, has kind of stabilized behind Chris Sale, Bryce Elder, Spencer Strider, Martin Perez, and Grant Holmes. Maybe the last two, not necessarily in that order, but either way, you've got five pretty capable starters there. But Waldrop last year posts a tremendous run over the final, month and a half, 2 months. And I think it kind of carved out the opportunity to maybe break camp as a Braves fifth starter this year. But the elbow surgery for him had to remove the loose bodies. And now he's apparently reaching kind of that little area where he can start to dream on what the Braves pitching depth can look like when you get Hurston Waldrop back. But you can't talk about Hurston Waldrop without talking about Spencer Schwellenbach. What's that going to look like? Because both those guys went down around the same time in spring training. Schwellenbach still, and I talked to him a couple of weeks ago, and nothing's really changed about this. He's thrown from 60 feet, moves to 75 feet now. He'll move out to do some longer toss at 120 feet, I believe. That's one more step than I was aware of. And then he'll do some work off the mound. Once he does his work off the mound, you'll start to get an idea of how he progresses and how comfortable the Braves are with setting a timetable for him, which I would assume is going to be sometime after August the 1st. Does that mean sometime in August? I don't know. Does it mean just sometime in September before the season's over? Again, I don't know, but you're kind of keeping your fingers crossed for him, and he has been encouraged by that. So we'll see how exactly he factors in. And one other piece is A.J. Smith-Shawver, who is also down in Florida and who is also throwing at high intensity, has been working in the bullpen sessions lately. Could he be out on a rehab assignment sometime soon? We'll find out. As far as what's next up for the Braves, it's an off day on Monday, and then they will head up to Chicago, where they will face the White Sox for 3 games, and after that, it'll be the New York Mets for 3 games, so a 6-game road trip. Again, off Monday, and then they have that 6-game road trip. Then they come home, and June the 16th, the Giants roll into town. Could Drake Baldwin be coming back around that time? We'll find out. And after that, the Braves will face the Brewers, and then head west, Padres and Giants. So a lot to go this month. Some challenges out ahead on the Braves schedule, but challenges have been generally accepted by the Braves thus far this year, and they've looked pretty good in doing it. That's going to wrap us up for this edition of From the Diamond. Again, my thanks to David Justice for all the time he gave me at the ballpark. My thanks, as always, to Walt Weiss for answering questions on a daily basis for all of us. And my thanks to Dominic Smith for making some time to talk about his time with the Atlanta Braves thus far. We'll be back next Sunday for 2 hours of Braves and baseball talk here on From the Diamond. Until then, so long, everyone.